Brandon Kazen-Maddox is an ASL artist, actor, choreographer, director, acrobat, and educator whose work lives at the intersection of movement, language, and identity. A third-generation native ASL signer and grandchild of deaf adults, Brandon creates performance that's as visually stunning as it is culturally rooted. They're a recipient of a 2022 Creative Capital Award for their ASL dance theater reimagining of The Wild Party, a 2023 Mertz Gilmore Foundation grant for their one-person show, Freedom, and have been recognized by Gucci's Chime for Change and All Arts, where their residency project, Soul Signs, Making Music Visible, premiered in 2025. They also just delivered their first TEDx talk, channeling the spirit of the music in ASL. Brandon, welcome to the pod. We're so excited to have you, as well as our interpreters, Autumn and Centaura. Nice to have you all. And I want to start with explaining why we're all here. And I would love if you could tell us, what is a CODA?
Ooh. This is a wonderful question. Thank you so much. You'll notice that because we can all see the Zoom, there's a little bit of a delay. So I was waiting to answer your question because I'm watching Autumn finish signing. And that is one aspect of what a CODA really is. So a CODA is a child of deaf adults, which means that you were born into a deaf family or to deaf people. So which means that you are familiar with deaf culture, which includes American Sign Language and, the linguistics around that and the culture around deaf people. And everyone is different when it comes to how they experience the deaf community. My mom is a CODA. And my two aunts and my uncle are all codas, which means my grandparents are deaf, which means I'm a goda. And the sign for goda is this. It's like you take your hand and you hold like, I don't know, I suppose, culture in your hand and then turn it into a 3. And that's the third generation. So I'm privileged to be able to have American Sign Language as my first language, as well as these two wonderful CODA interpreters with me here.
Well, this is very cool. I'm learning a lot already.
I mean, let's just kick it off with Brandon. Tell us about you.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So let's see. The first thing is my name sign is a B in American Sign Language, tapped twice on the sternum. And that's my name sign that was given to me by my grandma and my mom. So name signs are something that you receive from a deaf person. And that's a big part of the deaf community. I am an activist and an advocate and an ally. I'm an American Sign Language artist. So that means that I take ASL and sign language and I blend it with music and dance and theater and technology. And so those are some key points about me.
Okay, so I feel like my brain can barely speak the one language I know most of the time. So how is your brain speaking, signing, thinking? And maybe you can't answer that because maybe this is just how it's always been for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's something really interesting, right? So a few days ago, so I have someone living with me, staying with me right now. They're my dramaturg. Who's familiar with the term dramaturg?
I am
Anyone?
definitely not.
No.
Not? Okay. So if you're writing something and you put like, let's say a story and you want to set it in a time period, and let's say it's like 1920 and it's in the South of America, not South America, but in like, Georgia or something.
Right.
And you have the character and you want the character to say, I'm drunk, for example. In 1920 in the South in Georgia, it might not have been that they said, I'm drunk. They could say, I'm tight. It's 1920. So, and where do they come from? Where does that person come from? So the context of your story. And a dramaturg is a person who examines a script and helps the writer stay on track with real time and real culture. So all that to say that recently I'm writing this one person show. It's called Freedom, between parentheses, which means that I'm signing the sign for freedom. That's the title. And it's all about a Black queer child raised in a white deaf world. And so there's a lot of dramaturgy and like picking out these aspects of my life that I have to do and trust someone else to look at as an audience member. And we go back and forth with that. But going back to your question about like multiple languages in your mind at the same time. Recently, my dramaturg and I went and were having dinner, and we decided they know Italian, spoken Italian. I know Spanish and French, and of course, sign language and English. So I said, hey, why don't we, once we step out of this room, skip English and just speak any other language for like 3 hours. And it was so much fun because she also can understand French. She knows she's studying French and she knows Spanish too. So it was so amazing to take this English language that like in America, often a lot of us only speak, and skip it, move it to the side, jump over it, go all the way around it, and still have like rich, beautiful, deep conversation. So I don't know if that really helps when it comes to thinking at the same, like in different languages at the same time, but I love to be able to have conversations where I can do that with people.
I love that answer. So, okay, we also, I'm not getting to any of my real questions because I'm just so fascinated. So we also, I feel like sometimes I'm listening to a podcast and I have to double check on my phone, did I put this at 2 times speed? Because the speed at which people speak. So I am trying to speak slower because you're inspiring me. Is this something that, again, because you're someone who grew up speaking multiple languages, has it slowed you down? Do you speak slower when you're interpreting? Or does that change or are you kind of always thinking and speaking that way? I'm so interested to know the answer to my long-winded question.
And to add on to that, it's interesting because now I'm very conscious of the fact that Laura and I, our banter together, we interrupt each other all the time because I don't know if it's a New Yorker thing or just because we like
our loud mouths.
Our loud mouths. Yeah, all the above. And our brains are just constantly thinking of questions to ask people. But seeing this and watching you speak reminds me that I have to pause and wait for the audience to kind of catch up. So I that delay is really interesting. But anyway, yes, please continue.
These are beautiful ideas, right? So the first thing is kind of from let's say an interpreter perspective. When I go and I interpret something that's like a plenary discussion or something where there are remarks that people are reading, I always try to talk with them and say, hey, if you don't mind to speak with grace and pace, that helps people understand that like, oh, I don't need to slow down, but I need to like be mindful of the words that are coming out of my mouth. And then I also suggest that if you can hear yourself, if you're actually listening to yourself, then the people who our job is to interpret everything that you're saying, will be perfect. But if you're not listening to your own self, what you're saying, then we're going to be working overtime. We're going to be working way hard. You're going to see us sweating. And what suffers is the sign language, because we have to try and get all this, or we have to like truncate and miss stuff. And so I think it's a really beautiful metaphor for listening to yourself. I wish more people in the public world could listen to themselves speak these days, I'll say.
So do you think that codas and godas are just better speakers and listeners across the board?
I would say definitely. Culturally, that's a different question or a different answer. But I think those of us who know sign language and English or any other language or any sign language, because you have American Sign Language, but we have to remember that that's in America, in the United States, and in Canada. That's who knows and uses American Sign Language. But there are other languages and other signed languages. So that's important to understand. There was another aspect of your question, though. Has sign language, like thinking in sign language or using it, slowed me down? And I would say the opposite. I would say that it has like sped me up. It's sped up how I receive the world. It's a visual gestural language. So, we who know ASL from birth grow up seeing the world and thinking about memories as images and feelings and concepts. And so my first word was the concept for moon. And it's like, I think of the moon in all of its phases, and I don't think the word MOON. So sign language has helped me understand how to look at the world like, not like a film, but not in words, not really in words. We in sign language and ASL world don't think in words. I mean, if you're an interpreter, you're constantly translating from the English language or whatever language that you can write into something that you have to create a three-dimensional visual gestural world for. So it's a lot of negotiation and balance of culture and linguistics.
I mean, you said something that I feel so ignorant. Like, I didn't even consider that American Sign Language was, I just thought it was the signing language. I didn't even consider it. It just blew my mind. I didn't think about, going to Europe or anywhere else in the world and having an opportunity to speak to other people in sign. That's so interesting.
Well, thinking about Europe, there's a festival. It happens every 2 years, and it's called CLIND apostrophe OEIL, Clin d'œil, which means wink festival in French. And it happens in REIMS in Reims, in France, every 2 years. And 20,000 deaf people from all over the world come and take over this one city for 4 days. And it's an arts and a cultural festival where there's films and music and a vibrating dance floor and visual art and poetry and music and all of these things, and from a deaf and signing perspective. What's fascinating about this place is that they use langue des signes française, so LSF, which is like French Sign Language, which is where ASL comes from. The mother of ASL is langue des signes française. And they use International Sign, IS. International Sign is not a language exactly. It's definitely a system of communication and a lot of different signs that we internationally have agreed upon. And you use IS in all these cultural spaces like the UN or this international festival. But what is beautiful is that you go to this festival, and if you know whatever sign language you know, you're just kind of like, you're constantly adjusting to the different languages of the people. And like I said in the beginning, where my friend and I skipped English, you're skipping ASL in ways, and you're like, oh, I guess I gotta go to a different kind of mindset to be able to communicate. But it's fascinating because if you know spoken Japanese, for example, and you're in the same room with a person who knows spoken German, and you try to talk to each other, there's not going to be as many cross successful moments in comparison to if you have a Japanese deaf person and a German deaf person. And though the sign languages are different, it's still like what we can successfully convey and get each other to understand through our bodies and through our facial expressions and through our hands and gestures is phenomenal.
This is so interesting.
I know.
Okay, so I read something, and it could be completely wrong because it was probably on social media, about how there's not even a large percentage of hearing parents who have deaf children who actually bother to learn ASL, for instance, which blew my mind. I was like, how I can't imagine not doing that. But so I think it's amazing that you learned ASL because of your grandparents, and that people who speak ASL might have hearing children and still teach them the language. And it feels so important to pass that on.
Definitely. I'll say that 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents, right? So those deaf kids start this world either with parents who understand anything about sign language and are like, oh, okay, I'm gonna give you sign language because that's your natural language. Or what is most common is the parents who are hearing know nothing about sign language. They want their child to be just like them. And they're like, well, I know English, so I'm going to teach you we're going to go to speech therapy. You're going to learn how to talk. And it can cause a lot of trauma within the deaf world and the deaf perspective. And we call that language deprivation. So a lot of deaf kids and to adults experience language deprivation because they're not given their natural mode of communication, the best form of communication, which is sign language. There's also a perspective of bilingual, bicultural communication. So understanding that we're in the United States of America, where we speak English and read and write in English, and understanding that someone is deaf and the best way for them to learn and communicate is through a visual gestural language, then that means that it's important to know both English to be able to read and write it, and sign language to be able to express oneself and communicate to the fullest degree of personhood. So, and also to go back to what you were saying, yes, ASL as legacy. Yes, that is why I am here. It is rare that ASL would make it to the third generation. You don't have language without linguistics and culture. And the cultural aspect is really important. And if you don't need ASL, then you won't necessarily use it, just like any other language. But my family needed ASL to communicate. I still talk with my grandparents. They're still deaf, and I love them very much. And I still need it. And at the same time, like, I've understood about my own brain that when I'm learning stuff, I have to sign the thing. If I'm learning something new, I have to sign it for it to actually like make it into my own brain, and absorb it as something that I know and I'm owning. So I think it's really fascinating as a linguist, but just about language in general. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to pivot slightly, or I'm just going to continue to ask you questions about ASL because I've never gotten to ask these questions before. So thank you. I'm a huge fan of I was trying to explain the Sunday routine from the New York Times to Erica because I was reading yours and I was like, oh my God, it's my favorite. You find out what interesting people or celebrities just do with their Sunday. So anyway, I loved reading yours. I felt like a major underachiever. But I did love how you mentioned that whatever you read before bed really infiltrates and stays with your dreams. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I'm really drawn to queer joy in my reading right now and in my viewing, anywhere I can find it. And I feel like especially with reading, I used to have to really look for it. And now it feels so much easier So tell me about what you're reading and what you love to read. I know you talk a little bit about it in your Sunday routine, but for our audience, tell us a little bit about what you like to read.
I love that. Yeah, reading, it's like many of us read from our phones. And I think we were talking about millennials, right? And we grew up with paper and ink. And if you don't use it, I think we might miss it. I know I miss it if I don't see it. And I often don't want to see a glowing light after a specific time of day. So that's why books. And right now I'm reading a book called Kafka on the Shore. And it's a beautiful book. It's very depictive. So it's got a lot of really beautiful imagery, and it kind of jumps from one storyline to another storyline. And so it keeps my brain like, oh, I remember this was developing. But I really enjoy books that transport me to a different time, to be able to leave this time. Because right now I spend so much of my day very deeply involved in what's happening right now, politically, socially, as an ad, an ad, as an oh my gosh, what is this sign? Supporter, activist. What am I saying? Advocate? Advocate. Thank you. See, sign language. As an advocate, as an activist, I'm always deeply involved in like what's happening in the world. So what I like to read, I like to kind of disconnect from contemporary world and either go back in time or go forward in time, or do something like, oh my gosh, if you've read Octavia Butler's Kindred, oh my goodness. If you haven't read that, you must. It is amazing. I won't,
Writing it down.
spoil anything for you.
Okay, thank you. I love a book rack.
Mm.
Highlighting that.
Mm-hmm. Entered.
But yeah, I love that because absolutely. First of all, I like a book. I'm a big library user because she keeps giving me books. And so I went from not collecting books to I have 2 piles now next to my nightstand. I'm like,
the caveat is I'm a big supporter of queer authors. And so I will buy their book versus getting it at the library.
It's making me look cheap and bad.
No, you read far more than I do. And then when I buy the book, I give it to you. So it's still like a queer library.
I know.
You see what I'm saying?
And I love that. Okay. But I love to have a book. And I am someone who I teach young people, and most of them are not reading. And I teach college, and I always start the semester asking, what are you reading? What do you like to read? And 99% of them, I don't read. Sometimes I scroll, I read on Instagram. And so I don't judge how people want to read. If you want to listen to the audiobook, if you want to read it on your Kindle, whatever. But man, do I love to have a book in my hands. I want to turn those pages. And yes, the glow of the light, no.
I kind of do. I'm sorry. I kind of do judge. I think what you said was interesting because you're saying the world that we live in is so crazy right now, and you're so involved in your activism, and you're so like, you need the separation. I hear so much, and I even tell myself this sometimes, that like looking at I just need to decompress for a few minutes, and I'm just going to like scroll on my phone. And that is my way of disconnecting from all of the things. But what you're actually doing is getting more involved in it and getting more rage baited by everything. But the only time I truly have reprieve is when I put that shit away and I open up a book and I'm completely separated from the world, just like you said. And I feel like that physical, I don't know, I can't read on a Kindle. I do listen because I'm in the car a lot, but like there is something physically, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the downside of being a library user is they always have the hardcover, whatever that. So anytime I go anywhere, I'm dragging a giant book around with me. I don't care.
But I think it's interesting, like kids, I'll call them kids, like early college days, don't read. But my 9-year-old carries around chapter books. and he's obsessed with books, and all he wants to do is go to the library, or can I take him to the bookstore? It's his favorite thing. So it's so interesting what happens in those adolescent teenage years into adulthood where you just disconnect from that, especially now.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying about kids and books because it makes me think about like bedtime stories, which is exactly kind of what you were saying, like what you put into your brain before you go to sleep, right? Is really important because it affects your dreams, it affects your mood the next day. And like one of the best things that we can do as queer people I think, is to stay healthy, stay mentally stable, rest and fight, and then rest again. And find the best ways for us to be able to rest so that we can continue to fight and not just like survive, but thrive. And like, how do we thrive? So, but I wanted to say another thing about kind of like the complexities of reading. Are you familiar with the term libretto?
No.
No, you are teaching us so much, Professor.
Okay, yes. I'm into it. I'm into it. Libretto. I say it like that because I'm finger spelling it. Libro, book,
Mm-hmm.
but Italian, like a book about the words that accompany music in an opera. And so my partner, his name is Kevin Newbury, and he is an opera director. He's been a director of opera for the past 25 years. And right now, our company, it's called Up Until Now Collective. We are producing this opera called Fellow Travelers. Heard
Stop.
about this? What do you know? What do you know? What do you know?
The Fellow Travelers book.
Mm-hmm.
Into an opera?
I am
We're
dying.
going.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're going.
You're going.
Yes. Obsessed.
Totally.
Obsessed.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of like background about Fellow Travelers. There's no sign yet. So deaf people, if you have ideas, bring them on. But Fellow Travelers, I don't know. You'll have to see the opera.
Yes.
But it started out as a book by a man named Tom Mallon. And then it became an opera 10 years ago. And then it became a Showtime miniseries. And then now it's on its 10th anniversary tour. And so what we've done is we're taking the like Broadway touring model of how a show tours on Broadway, but applying it to an opera of Fellow Travelers. And Fellow Travelers, just for anyone who doesn't know, it's a gay love story between two men during the McCarthy era. And it's during something called the Lavender Scare. So basically they were forcibly identifying, gay and queer people who were working in government and outing them and firing them. And so that's what this opera is about. It's this love story between these two men who are working in government underneath this ideology, which is unfortunately very similar to a contemporary ideology.
And it's so, so sad.
But
So
it's so beautiful.
and so sad.
So beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Okay, this is kind of unrelated, but I just had my students read Recitative by Toni Morrison, which I was teaching them today. I'm like, that's a word from opera.
Yes, absolutely. 100% true.
See, I'm trying to let them know the things I make them read make sense now. And here we are talking about opera.
Okay, so you're basically the ultimate representation of intersectionality. Talk to us about how that has inspired all of your work. And by all of your work, you're not just one thing. You are a culmination of all of this creativity. How has intersectionality really played a part in how you do your work and who you are now?
Yeah, thank you. That's a special kind of question. I think people find comfort in belonging. We find our communities where we feel like we belong. We find like-minded people, and then we decide that we belong there. Within the deaf community, it's interesting. One time I had a deaf teacher tell me, this was a white deaf woman who told me that I would need to know my place in the deaf community, very specifically. And I was like, ooh, I was like, we don't really say that anymore. Like, I don't know. And I've those words have really churned in my mind for a long time. And in my one person show, I use that, that story and explain that I don't think it's really about knowing your place in any community, but much rather about finding your place, being curious and finding spaces that maybe you don't necessarily belong 100%, but like you can be curious, you can investigate, you can ask people about their experience and see where you might align. And that's been my joy, because if I focused too much on trying to belong anywhere, I'm oftentimes met with closed doors. And they hurt. Those closed doors really will they'll do a number on you. So it's been quite a journey to find where I belong, and to be able to belong to many places is a privilege. And at the same time, it's tough because there's always something that you don't perfectly fit in, right? And that can mean that you are excluded from something that's very niche. I have lots to say about that, but find where you belong is my diplomatic answer.
It's my new tattoo. I like it.
That was a really incredible answer.
Incredible. Okay, I think Laura has one more question.
So, growing up as a millennial means coming of age during the rise of the internet and pop culture, self-expression. So, how do you think that era shaped you creatively?
Wow. I mean, I watched a lot of TV. So I had PBS.
R.I.P.
Right? We love you, PBS. We do. It's like bifurcating into like different spaces too, so it's okay. But like Reading Rainbow and Sesame Street, and and daytime talk shows. Those were fun. Exposure, right? Listening to the radio and those kinds of things. Nostalgically, I feel like we're lucky because we can still go back to those things that influenced us when we were growing up. Like the kids now, they can't experience them really without like, it's not hard like wired into their brains, but it's in us. And I think it makes us really special because we're truly a mixture of analog and digital. And just like bilingual, bicultural, it's a really good approach to the world. If you're only in one world, you're missing another part of the spectrum.
That's
My
incredible.
9-year-old started singing a jingle at dinner the other night because now all the streaming has commercials. And I was like, my children will never know what a commercial break feels like. And now they're learning. I was like, where did you hear that jingle? I just didn't think it was something that they would grow up with. So some of it's coming back. Also, he told me one day in the car how his dad had given him this thing that plays CDs and you put headphones right in your ear. And I was like, a Discman? Okie doke.
Okay, so we have so many more questions, but we are coming up on time. You are just a blessing to speak with, and this has just been so enlightening and awesome, so thank you so much. But before we wrap up, we have a little segment we call Queer Quickies, and we ask you a question, and you have to, first thing that pops into your head, let us know. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. First celebrity crush.
Goodness. What a good question. Honestly, I think Sandra Bullock.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
She's a
Mhm.
hottie.
She's a
Oh my
hottie.
God. Like speed and miscongeniality.
Miss Congeniality.
You
That's a
Today,
good one.
I asked all my students, I was like, well, you remember in the movie Speed? And they all just
No.
stared. And I was like, Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock? And they were like, no.
No.
Okay, I'm going to stop using cultural references with you children.
Honestly, Ocean's 8 with Kate Blanchett, just like that dynamic killed me and forever is in my mind. What is the first queer bar you ever went to?
Ooh, what a good question. I think. Oh, I know. When I was 16, oh my God, in Portland, because I'm from Vancouver, Washington, in Portland, there was this place called, oh my God, it was a 16 and over club. I don't think you have those anymore, but there was no alcohol. You couldn't drink. And it was just a place to go to like dance. And I am forgetting the name right now, but when I got my license, we would drive from Vancouver to Portland and like hang out there. And I used to see Jinx Monsoon
Stop.
perform there. And like before performing, it was like we were just like young gay kids. And we would like hang out in the same but was it called the Escape? The Escape or something like that. But I'll have to get back to you on like what it was called. But that's the first one.
What's the one stereotype about queer people you secretly love?
A stereotype, positive or negative, one I love,
One you
right?
love.
About queer people?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, maybe that it's something between the fact that we're like sluts and that we're like really fashionable because yeah.
I love that. Also, just a little caveat. My wife and I were talking, I can't remember what we were talking about, but she said, oh, and his slutty glasses were so cute. And of course, my son never misses anything.
Oh my goodness.
We're constantly defining things for him. And he's like, well, what's slutty? And we both looked at each other like, literally, I don't even know how to. We're like, we'll tell you later.
Later.
I don't know how to explain slutty.
Undefinable.
You'll know someday. He was just like, but
Who is she talking about?
I can't remember
Oh,
who we were
come
talking
on.
about. I really can't. Slutty glasses.
Well, it makes me think of the Jonathan Bailey. I think like
It was
there was
probably Jonathan Bailey.
about his like
Yeah.
slutty glasses.
Uh-huh.
But I think like there's the ethical slut, right? Which is
Uh-huh.
like whatever that means. But yeah, queer culture is just so open. And if that's a stereotype to be open, then like
We'll take it.
put
Love
it
it.
all over me.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. What's your queer superpower?
Ooh. Mm. I think my queer superpower would be being like unabashedly myself 100% all the time and never changing who I am in any room, no matter who is in the room. I think that's like a superpower.
Yeah, it is.
I love that.
Yeah, it is. Okay. What makes you go from 0 to unhinged?
Mm. That's a good question. And this is unhinged like oh I'm like taking off my earrings ready to fight or like
yeah.
oh,
Or
okay.
Or it
some
could be,
people interpret it as like unhinged in a great way. So
Yeah.
whatever your interpretation is.
Mm. Oh, that's a hard one. I think I've had to learn how to really control my face. From a person who comes from sign language world, that's really hard. And those like public moments don't really happen. I don't like allow them to happen. So this is a hard and complicated question. So I'm gonna go with music that's really amazing, from a DJ that's spinning, that understands how to read their audience and like the movement of people. And when it's a DJ that is like really doing their job and understands like the movement of a crowd, I'll lose it because it's just like so good, you know?
That's fantastic. I love this. I love it. Okay, last one. Best queer movie or show?
Ooh. Huh. Best queer movie or show. Hmm. This is not really queer exactly, but I think it's really it's my favorite movie. And it is What Dreams May Come.
Oh my
Have you
goodness.
seen this movie before?
A million years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being kind of like devastated at the end. Is this the Robin Williams movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. And like the queer aspect of it is like, I will just talk about it from a dream perspective, but like what happens in this other world is very like queer. It's just really like magical and unlimited and artistic. And I think like if the world could be that, that is like what queer world is for us every day, or at least for me. So I think like I learned a lot about queerness from this like imaginary world that they're in.
Yeah.
And it really shaped like what I think of as queerness, even though it's not specifically queer.
Amazing.
All right, Brandon, I know we talked a little bit about the projects you're working on and what's going on with you. So tell everyone where to find you, what's coming up, plug it all.
Absolutely. Definitely. Okay, so what's coming next is in May, me and my friend Jen Kidwell, who is an amazing author, Black woman, writer, and she and I are doing a show called We Come to Collect, a Flirtation with Capitalism. And so we're going to Australia, to Melbourne in May. And then we're going to continue to like tour around. So keep your eye out for that. I'm creating a show. It's an ASL rock opera called The Wild Party. And right now, if you want to know about that story, you can go see The Wild Party at New York City Center. There's one version and then there's another version, but I'm making an ASL opera about it. So that's exciting. And you can find me on Instagram at Kazen-Maddox. You can find our website, upuntilnowcollective.com, to see what's up with our queer production world. And if you want to work with me, or you want me to come, and if you know there's a university or an organization where you think that a queer Black person, non-binary person who knows sign language can come and talk about the things that I know, you can visit speakout.com. I think that's the organization that I work with for public speaking things.
Okay.
And I'm very appreciative to be here with you all. Thank you so much for having me on
Well,
this
you
show.
have so little going on. I can imagine it wasn't hard to make time.
I mean, living in New York City, you have to just keep hustling. There's no standing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
We
Well,
know.
We
all
do.
of you know.
Thank you, all three of you, so much for being with us and sharing with us and teaching us and laughing with us. This was really so wonderful.
Very special. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Brandon Kazen-Maddox for recommended reading, teaching us about codas and godas, and reminding us to slow down, take a breath, and think before we speak. Thank you, too, to their incredible ASL interpreters, Autumn and Centaura.